I've been the custodian of this Race Red Ford Mustang GT manual fastback for around 5 months now. This car here having almost 12,000 kilometers on the odometer, although I've only added about 4,000 of those. But why do I have a dark horse next to me? Now, this dark horse here, like this GT here, is an MY24 car and has been on Ford Australia's press fleet for 15,000 kilometers in this case. And so what a perfect example to see whether my long-term GT manual is a better car and easier to live with than essentially Australia's long-term dark horse manual. Now, it's not just a silly test here, because there are very strong rumours that the dark horse is coming back to Australia once again as a limited edition model, and likely only as a manual for MY26. So what a perfect time to have the dark horse manual fastback against the GT manual fastback. I want to find out which one's better. I want to find out if this is worth $25,000 more, or is the base model actually a better all-round car? That's what we're here to find out. I'm Nathan Ponchard, and this is Chasing Cars.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Looking at them from this angle, the dark horse essentially looks like a decal on a spoiler pack, and to an extent it is that, but there is so many engineering changes to this car compared to the normal GT that Ford in the US said it spent more than 3 years developing the dark horse. And so as we go through it, you can see that all of these little tweaks here and there do add up to a quite different whole, even though essentially these are the same car underneath. Now, the 5-litre Coyote quad cam 32 valve V8 under the bonnet of both of these Mustangs is essentially the same, but the dark horse has had its ECU retuned, it has forged connecting rods, it has a different exhaust cam duration, and it does have tweaks to the exhaust, plus bigger rear pipes at the back, and that achieves very little on paper in terms of power. 345 kilowatts, 350 kilowatts, and essentially 550 Newton meters out of both vehicles. Now, the US car does have quite a lot more grunt than the right-hand drive dark horse because of something to do with the rerouting of the complex exhaust system with the right-hand steering column and all that sort of stuff. But it really doesn't matter, because the changes, all of those little changes, make a difference. Now, underneath these two Mustangs are pretty similar, mainly because this GT here has optional MagnaRide magnetic adaptive dampers, which are standard in the dark horse, although they've been retuned here, and it does have stiffer front springs, and it does have a Torsen limited slip differential, not the regular limited slip differential that's in this GT manual here. The diff themselves is different because this one's a 3.73 to 1 and this one's a 3.55 to 1, and they both have completely different manual gearboxes as well. This dark horse here having much shorter and tighter ratios than the GT. A Tremec here, a Get Drag here, and so on the road, all of these little things matter. Now, what sets the dark horse apart from the regular GT isn't just the stickers and the spoilers. It's actually quite different. The bonnet may be the same and the air extraction vent here may be the same, but it does have all that sticker stuff there, but it's down here where it starts to show what it does. These ducts here are completely open and really suck air through. It's a completely different bumper design down the bottom. It's got quite a bit deeper chin spoiler, so going over speed humps in the GT is quite effortless, but you need to be careful in the dark horse because you can scrape the front end. And as we go through the side and the rear, it's little bits of colouring, this blue ember paint, which looks amazing in sun, in my opinion, and the rear spoiler and stuff, and the badging, because it does have different dark horse badging. No 5.0 here, it just has a pony symbol looking you dead in the eyes to show that it does have a level of intent, and that is exactly how it plays out. You can add spoilers and stripes to the GT, but it just doesn't need it. It already has this beautiful muscular shape. That is nice and clean. This shows what this car is really capable of. The most interesting thing about the dark horse interior is that it is incredibly similar to the GT's interior. It's just all the tweaking here and there. The general architecture is the same. All of the padding is the same. This here being the same as the GT, but it has blue stitching, The fake carbon fibre here is the same. Now, it does say 6,057 Dark Horse here, meaning this is not a limited edition globally, although it was in Australia. We only got 1,000 of these in the MY24. Hopefully we get more for MY26. There is a different sill insert there, but everything else is the same. Even the door trims here, the strakes, the shape, it's the same. But here we have grey leather, blue leather, suede, whereas the GT has the same colours. The seats, again, the same as the optional Recaros in my GT, but here they have sort of Alcantara suede centres, again perforated, again with no heating or cooling, but you don't really need it. The thing about the Dark Horse though is that this suede holds you in place a lot better than the regular leather in the GT. Looking forward, again, same thing, different leather around the steering wheel, different stitching, a bit more matte blacking rather than gloss blacking. Essentially looking at the same instruments, although the Dark Horse has little orange LCD bars for the fuel and the engine temp, whereas the normal GT has white. That sort of stuff is all very, very similar. Same with the engine modes, same with the drive modes here, all of that kind of the same. Where it stands apart a little bit is that this has a 3D printed titanium gear knob for its Tremec TR3160 manual transmission, and the GT has a leather and metal one for its Getrag MT82 transmission. And they do feel a lot different to hold in your hand, and they feel quite different in practice. One thing that these cars do get is wireless phone charging. That has been removed by all Mustangs since, and I can tell you now, it doesn't matter because it doesn't really work very well anyway. You're better off just using a cord, so that is no loss. The general quality in here is really good. Again, the same thing in the Dark Horse is that this panel here is a bit loose, just like the normal GTs. It doesn't have stop-start there though, which is what I'm pushing right now, which is a good thing in my opinion. Let us know what you think, but I just kind of want the engine to be running all of the time. And the rest of the interior, this is seriously the best made American car I've been in probably ever. Way better than some of the other ones that I've driven recently. About the only thing you can really pick on is the way the sticker on the windscreen is stuck on saying it's built with pride in Flat Rock, Michigan, and I don't think it really needs that. I've done a lot of driving in this GT manual over the past nearly 4,000 kilometres, but the first thing that I do, other than start it up with a button here, is to hit the pony symbol down the middle here, and when it comes up on the screen, I turn the exhaust to sport. You don't necessarily need it because it's still quite fruity, this bimodal system that Australia gets standard on the GT, but it just adds that extra little bit of pop and crackle, and especially if you get the clutch depression right. Now, comparing and contrasting the GT to the Dark Horse, notice just how effortlessly easy the GT manual is to drive. It's really, really quite forgiving. You do have to have your foot sort of positioned slightly inward a bit, almost like you're a little bit pigeon-toed and with your knees a bit closer together, which may not suit everybody, but if you get it there, the clutch feel is beautiful, the gear shift is perfectly smooth. There is more travel here in this Getrag MT82 than there is in the Tremec and the other car, but it's so precise and well oiled and lovely. It is way, way better than the manuals that we used to be accustomed to in our Australian V8 GT muscle cars. It's much more European, which leads me to the dynamics of this car. I haven't driven an S650 Mustang without the magnetic dampers, but I can say that they do make this car really drivable. On pretty much all surfaces, the suspension in the GT is firm, but not too firm. It can handle big bumps really quite well, even wearing these 19-inch wheels, and yet when you hammer it, it has a balance and a grip that is just so tangible all of the time. The steering in normal is plenty meaty enough, although you can just go to sport here by pressing the mode here in the dial and going one step down, and you automatically get the sport exhaust, and you get a little bit meatier steering and a little bit firmer damping. But again, the same old, changes the throttle sensitivity as well, but none of it is too excessive. Again, it's drivable like this every single day. And I have driven this car in very heavy traffic, and other than occasionally coming back from the gym and depressing the clutch. See, this is the base car, remember? Still sounds like that. Depressing the clutch after doing stuff on your legs and your left calf threatens to cramp, there is that, but in which case buy the automatic. But there's so much to love about this manual. It does have a 3.55 to 1 diff ratio and a limited slip diff. So in pretty much all driving environments, the traction from the rear end of this Mustang GT is astounding. But combined with the gear ratios, it's also very tall geared. You can find that you can pull along at 1,000 RPM in 6th gear really quite effortlessly, but it is definitely a tall geared car. It does take a little while for the engine to sort of come on song. It's tractable always, like I said, from 1,000 RPM or even less, but there is definitely a sweet spot, and that's about there, 3,500 to 6,500. It'll rev to 7,500, but the last little bit isn't necessarily as spine-tingly as you may want. I think max power is at 7,250, and after that there's just no point going any further, but that's not what this car is about. There's just so much to like here. Even the brakes, they're the same as the Dark Horse in the Aussie Spec GT, and they are ample. They feel really good. The combination of them with the tyre grip and all that makes this GT feel a little bit like it's been engineered by BMW M. It has a consistency to it in the way that the steering responds, in the balance of the car, and all of that that is just so massively superior to the previous generation Mustang that I drove multiple variations of, and I don't think any of them are completely sorted. So this car here really has kind of blown me away a little bit in what it can do just out of the box, albeit with magnetic dampers. For the most part, this is such a great day-to-day, livable, lovable muscle car that I was fascinated to see just how different or how better the Dark Horse can be. So let's find out. The first impression of the Dark Horse is that everything is the same but different. Little tweaks like we've been through. Every little thing has changed. Exhaust a little bit louder, the clutch travel a bit shorter, the gear shift much sharper, potentially notchier, but also more defined in its gait. And just that combination of short, sharp clutch travel, short gear shift throw, and much shorter gear ratios, as well as the media steering. We're just in normal mode here, and it feels media. Power gets down better. It just, that rear diff, that Torsen diff, just works a bit better. All of it just kind of amps it so beautifully. And I thought, how could you make the GT that much better? But the years invested in developing this Dark Horse have not been wasted on any level. It does require quite a bit of focus when you're feeling lazy. The other GT is a much lazier car to drive because its gearing so much taller, its clutch is more forgiving, its gear shift is more oiled and longer throw, but here everything is very positive. Now, what really changes the driving character of the cars is the gearing. 3.55 to 1 diff ratio in the GT, 3.73 in the manual of the Dark Horse. And then you go through the ratio set. If you look at the individual ratios from first gear all the way through to 6th, the Dark Horse is shorter. But in the middle there, it's almost like it has stacked them so tight, because 5th gear in the Dark Horse is 1:1, which is 4th gear in the GT. And the Dark Horse has a shorter gear ratio. So its 5th gear is shorter than the GT's 4th, which makes a huge difference to that sort of little bit of doughiness at the bottom end that the GT manual has, where it's tractable, but like I was saying, it needs revs to really pick itself up, especially from about 2,500 onwards, whereas the Dark Horse is already there. And that makes a huge difference to the way it drives, even just around town. The ride is a bit firmer, but just every little bit adds to a much greater whole to make this car so lovable. Like, if Ford Australia brings this in for MY26, and even if it costs $125,000 drive away, for example, it's going to be at least, I would say, 106, 108, 110. It's going to have to carry a bit of the burden of the NVES stuff for emissions, I still think it's a bargain, especially compared to what you would need to pay in a German BMW M and that sort of thing to get a similar level of focus and enjoyment and excellence. About the only area where the Dark Horse kind of shows a little bit of compromise is the way that it's geared to be on the freeway. Sixth gear is almost as tall as sixth gear in the GT. Of course, it's shorter overall because of the shorter diff, but there's a big gap between fifth and sixth, kind of just like there used to be in older Aussie muscle cars between fourth and fifth when they were all 5-speeds. The first four would be really tight and fifth would be a huge jump, and so is the case here with sixth. It kind of drops from about 3,000 RPM to 2,000 RPM in one shift, and yet it's still, again, really tractable, really effortless. What are we going to sixth here? At 60 k's an hour, 1,000 RPM, it moves along fairly leisurely, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable. And you've also got all those other gears to play with, so who cares about that anyway? The difference, I think, in having the wheels a little bit wider with the same tyres makes them feel quite different in the way they respond. It's almost like they're a different tread pattern, but they're not. They're the same. And I suppose that leads me to what we're left with here. This is an MY24 Dark Horse that's been on the press fleet since launch. It's done 15,183 kilometres, and the only thing that's really worn on it is the tyres. And even then, they still feel pretty good. A new set of boots on this thing, and geez, it'd be great. It is surprisingly robust. This is a proper American muscle car that for us Australians, now that we don't make cars like this anymore, is a amazing privilege to enjoy and experience, because it reminds us of the sort of vehicle that we used to love and build ourselves, but it isn't gone completely. It remains in the Ford Mustang, and I just hope that Ford keeps building this car. It doesn't matter that underneath this is the previous generation Mustang with new styling. It feels like a completely different and massively better generation, and I love it so much, and I want a new Dark Horse so bad. So keep your eye out for when they go on sale, because you don't want to miss this. After living with the GT manual for 5 months, I kind of thought, why would you need any more than this? And then I spent a month in the Dark Horse, and now I know why this car sold out so quickly and why the 2026 model is likely to do the same thing, because it deserves to. It's had so much focus done in so many areas that it is a less forgiving car, particularly at the front end here, scraping over speed humps. Also the clutch and the gearbox and everything, all of that is so much more focused, but in every way that counts, this is a more immediate, a better car, a more fun car, and a more in-your-face Mustang. Going back to the GT over there, certainly approaching the regular GT just from the back end here, it almost looks a little bit like a base model, but it is so much more than that too. It is a more forgiving car than the Dark Horse, and it is an easier car to live with. But the Dark Horse is worth every cent of its roughly $25,000 premium over that car. If it was up to me and I could afford to put my deposit down for an MY26 Mustang Dark Horse, I would be racing to get one of these over a regular GT, but I wouldn't feel completely shortchanged if I ended up with a GT manual with Magna Ride and Recaros, because it's still a great muscle car. Let us know what you think. Do you think this is the best looking Mustang of all time like I do? Do you believe me when I'm saying that this is like a BMW engineered German M version of an American muscle car? It's also probably the best built American car that I can think of, and I'd like to hear your comments. Have you had experience with owning a Mustang? What do you think of your Dark Horse if you happen to have one, and would you recommend to have one long term? And if you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video and hit the notification bell and tell us what you think about chasing cars, and thank you for watching.